AITA for refusing to continue hosting free parties for my family. I'm tired of paying for everyone and doing everything. I 26 have always been the type of person who loves hosting. Like, genuinely, it's one of my favorite things to do. You know how some people dread having to put together a party or host a family gathering because it's too much work or they feel stressed? That's not me at all. I thrive in those moments. There's just something about bringing people together, creating an atmosphere, and watching everyone have a good time that fills me with so much joy. I think part of it is because I'm really into all the little details, making sure the decorations are perfect, curating a playlist that sets the mood, planning a menu from scratch, and even coming up with games or activities for everyone to enjoy. I live for that stuff. It all started about 4 years ago, right around Christmas. Before that, my family's gatherings were pretty basic, for lack of a better word. Not that there was anything wrong with them, but they were definitely low-key. You know, just one meal, maybe a BBQ, some store-bought pizza, or a dish that someone had quickly thrown together. Dessert was usually a cake from the nearest bakery, and that was about it. No decorations, no activities, no real effort to make it feel festive. People would show up, eat, maybe chat for a bit, and then leave. It was nice, but it didn't feel special, you know. Christmas has always been my absolute favorite holiday. There's just something magical about it, the lights, the music, the decorations, the food. I wanted to bring that magic into our family gatherings. So 4 years ago, I decided I was going to host Christmas at my place for the first time. I went all out. I'm talking full-on decorations, like a beautifully decorated Christmas tree, lights everywhere, and little touches that made the house feel like a winter wonderland. I also planned an entire menu that I made from scratch, which was no small feat considering I was still pretty new to cooking at the time. I didn't just stop there, though. I organized a secret Santa, which we had never done before, and even planned out some games and karaoke for after dinner. And you know what? It was a massive hit. Everyone loved it. They couldn't stop praising how beautiful everything was, how good the food tasted, how fun the activities were. I remember my mom specifically saying, "You should do this every year," and my heart just swelled with pride. It felt amazing to have given them that experience, to have transformed what was usually a pretty standard gathering into something memorable. After that, it kind of became my thing. I was the one who hosted Christmas, and honestly, I loved every second of it. Over the years, I got better and better at it. Each party became more elaborate as I honed my cooking and decorating skills. I'd spend weeks planning the menu, tweaking my recipes to make sure everything was perfect. I'd browse Pinterest for decoration ideas, come up with new games or activities to keep things fresh, and overall just poured my heart and soul into making each event even better than the last, and my family noticed. They started asking me to host birthdays, too, as a gift for them. "Oh, you're so good at it, and we love what you do," they'd say, and I'd happily agree. It was never too much for me to handle, and with our main family being only around 9 or 10 people, it wasn't financially burdensome either. But here's where things started to shift. Over the last year, something changed. At first, it was subtle. Small comments that didn't seem like a big deal but still stuck with me. Then it became more noticeable. It wasn't just the comments anymore, it was the attitude. And that attitude slowly started to suck the joy out of hosting for me. The first sign of trouble came last Christmas. As usual, I had sent out invitations, clearly stating that the party would start at 3:30 p.m. I had everything planned down to the minute, appetizers ready by 3:45, dinner served at 5, followed by dessert, games, and then karaoke. It was going to be great, but then, at around 12 p.m., 3.5 hours before the party was supposed to start, my family started showing up. I was still running around, setting up decorations, getting things in the oven, and frankly, I wasn't even fully dressed yet. They walked in and immediately started commenting on how I wasn't ready. "Oh, you're still decorating, why isn't the food ready yet? Are we going to have to wait for you to finish all this? I'm hungry, why didn't you make anything to snack on?" I was taken aback. I mean, they were 3 hours early. How could they expect me to be ready when they showed up that much ahead of time? But instead of understanding that they had arrived way too soon, they made it seem like I was the one at fault for not being prepared. I brushed it off, thinking it was a one-time thing, and tried to keep things moving. But then, they started picking at the appetizers I had set aside for later, eating random things that weren't even supposed to be served yet, and telling me to just forget about the decorations and start cooking because we're hungry. I was so frustrated, but I didn't want to ruin the mood, so I rushed through the rest of the prep, cutting corners to accommodate them. We didn't even get to half the things I had planned because they kept pushing me to move things along. And then, once dinner was over, most of them left. Just like that, they ate, and then they were gone. No games, no karaoke, no dessert. The party I had spent weeks planning, the one I had envisioned as this amazing, fun-filled evening, was over in a blink, and I was left feeling like all my effort had been for nothing. I wish I could say that was the only time this happened, but it wasn't. It happened again for my mom's birthday, my uncle's, my aunt's, and most recently, my husband's birthday. Each time, they showed up way earlier than the invite stated, made comments about how I wasn't ready, rushed me through the party, and then left right after eating. And each time, I felt more and more drained, like the joy was being sucked out of something that used to make me so happy. The final straw was my husband's birthday. I had gone all out again, planning this amazing early dinner with decorations that tied into a fun theme. I sent out invites saying the party would start at 3:30 p.m., and, like clockwork, people started showing up at noon. They saw the decorations half done and immediately started asking why the food wasn't ready, why I was falling behind, and why they had to wait around hungry. It was like they didn't even care that they had shown up 3 hours early. They just expected me to drop everything and cater to them. They pressured me into skipping half the decorations, rushing the food, and cutting things off the schedule, just so they wouldn't have to wait. And then, once dinner was served, they ate and left. Again. Most of them didn't even stay for dessert, and the games I had planned didn't happen. I was livid, but more than that, I was heartbroken. I had put so much effort into making it special for my husband, and they had completely ruined it by showing up early, demanding things, and then bailing. After that, I decided I was done. I didn't say anything at the time, but in my heart, I know I wasn't going to keep hosting like this. It wasn't fun anymore. It wasn't bringing me joy. It felt like a burden, and I didn't want to be taken advantage of like that anymore. Fast forward to yesterday. I was talking to my mom on the phone, and she casually asked me what I was planning for Christmas this year. I told her, point blank, nothing. She was shocked and asked why, and that's when I let it all out. I told her I was tired of how they had been treating me, how they show up early, criticize me, rush me through everything, and then leave without even staying to enjoy the party. I said I was done hosting because it wasn't fun for me anymore. She did not take that well. She immediately got defensive and said I was overreacting, that I couldn't take a joke and that I should just learn to accommodate the family. She said I needed to be more flexible and stop being so rigid with my plans. I told her that it wasn't about being rigid, it was about being respected. I spend weeks planning these parties, and instead of appreciating that, they've become demanding and ungrateful. We went back and forth, and it turned into a full-blown argument. The conversation ended with us both angry, and honestly, it's left me feeling torn. My husband is fully on my side. He's seen firsthand how much effort I put into these parties and how my family has been treating me lately. He agrees that I deserve a break and that if they can't respect my boundaries, then maybe it's time for them to take over hosting duties. A couple of days went by, and I still hadn't heard from my mom. Usually, she'd have called to smooth things over by now, but this time, radio silence. I figured she was still mad about our argument, so I wasn't in any rush to reach out either. Then, I got a message in the family group chat. My aunt chimed in casually, asking what the plans were for Christmas this year. I was just about to ignore it, but then my uncle replied, "Yeah, Sophia, what's the theme this time?" And just like that, I saw red. Here we go again, I thought. They just assumed I was going to host, like always, despite the fact that I'd made it crystal clear to my mom that I was done. But instead of blowing up, I decided to try a different approach. I took a deep breath and typed out a message, trying to keep it polite but firm. "Hey everyone. Just a heads up, I won't be hosting Christmas this year. I think it's time for someone else to take over, especially after last year. I'd be happy to help with ideas if needed, but hosting isn't in the cards for me this time around. I hit send, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. Finally, I'd made my stance clear in front of the whole family. No more awkward conversations, no more assumptions. But of course, it didn't take long for the replies to start rolling in. "Oh, come on, Sophia, don't be like that," my cousin wrote, with a laughing emoji attached. "You love hosting, and you're so good at it," added my aunt. Even my mom jumped in, saying, "You can't just leave us hanging, you know you always do the best job." I couldn't believe it. Here I was, laying it out for them that I was serious about not hosting, and they were acting like it was some kind of joke. I tried again, this time with a bit more bite to my tone. "I'm serious, guys. I really need a break this year. Someone else should host." But again, they brushed it off. My uncle wrote, "Stop joking, Sophia. You know no one does it like you." I was fuming. How could they not see how exhausted I was? How could they just dismiss me like this? And then, in a moment of frustration and probably pettiness, I made a decision. If they wanted me to host so badly, fine, but it wasn't going to come for free this time. I opened the group chat again and typed out another message. "All right, if you all want me to host, I'll do it. But this year, I'm charging $300 per family to cover my time, the food, and all the decorations. If you're okay with that, I'll go ahead and start planning." I hit send and waited. The chat went dead silent for a few minutes. I stared at my phone, wondering if they were all just sitting there in shock. Finally, my cousin broke the silence with a single word. "Wait, what?" Then the floodgates opened. "Are you serious? $300. This has to be a joke." But I wasn't joking. I was serious. And I let them know, nope, not a joke. If you want the kind of party you're used to, that's my price. Some of them were clearly trying to process what I just said. My aunt replied, "We've never had to pay before, why now?" I could feel my anger bubbling up again, but I kept it in check. Because I've been doing this for years, for free, and it's gotten to the point where it's no longer fun for me. I'm putting in all this effort and spending my own money, and instead of appreciation, I'm getting criticism and demands. So if I'm going to keep doing it, I need to be compensated. There was more silence after that. Then my mom jumped in. "This is ridiculous, Sophia. We're family. You can't just charge us like that." And that's when I realized they really didn't get it. They didn't understand how much work I was putting in or how much it was taking out of me. So, I laid it all out for them. I'm not just hosting a meal. I'm planning, cooking, decorating, and making sure everything runs smoothly. I'm spending weeks preparing, and all I get in return is stress and ungrateful comments. I love hosting, but not when it's like this. If you want me to keep doing it, it has to be worth my time. If not, someone else can take over. It took a while for them to respond after that. I could tell they were shocked. Honestly, I don't think they ever expected me to push back like this. But eventually, one by one, they started replying. "Well, I guess if that's what it takes," my cousin wrote. "I don't love the idea, but we'll chip in," said my aunt. Even my mom, who was still clearly upset, reluctantly agreed. "Fine, but I hope you know this changes things." I didn't reply after that. I didn't need to. They'd made their choice, and so had I. I wasn't about to back down, and if they wanted their perfect Christmas party, they were going to have to pay for it. A part of me felt guilty for taking it this far, but another part of me, the part that had been taken for granted for years, felt a sense of victory. Maybe now they'd finally realize how much I was really putting into these events. And you know what? By the end of the day, the money started coming in. One Venmo notification after another. It felt surreal, honestly. Like, after all these years of being expected to do everything for free, they were finally paying me for my time and effort. I wasn't sure how Christmas was going to go this year, but one thing was clear: it was going to be different. And that, at least, was something. The day of Christmas finally rolled around, and honestly, I had mixed feelings about it. On one hand, I was excited because, as always, I love the holiday. I love the decorations, the food, the cozy atmosphere. But on the other hand, I was a bit nervous about how things would go down with my family, especially after everything that happened with the $300 arrangement. I'd made it clear that if they wanted me to host, it would be on my terms this time, but knowing my family, I had a feeling they'd try to push boundaries like they always did. So, I planned accordingly. I sent out formal invitations again and explicitly wrote that the party would start at 3:30 p.m. no earlier. I even added, in a joking but serious tone, if you show up early, expect to help with the preparations. I thought maybe that would be enough to dissuade them from arriving before the set time. Deep down, though, I knew better. They always showed up early, no matter what I said, and I had a sneaking suspicion this time wouldn't be any different. So, I decided to test a little experiment. Instead of rushing around and having everything nearly done by noon, I purposely left a lot unfinished. I did the bare minimum. The decorations were half up, the appetizers weren't even started, and the main dishes were still prepped but not yet cooked. It was the ultimate trap, and I was ready for them. Sure enough, by 12:45 p.m., I heard the familiar sound of my mom's car pulling up in the driveway. I glanced at the clock and couldn't help but smirk. 3 hours early, as expected. I didn't even bother greeting them right away. I stayed in the kitchen, organizing a few ingredients while I waited for the inevitable. "Sophia," my mom called from the front door. "Why is everything still in boxes? You haven't started yet." I stepped into the living room, still calm, and with a smile, I replied, "Hi, Mom. You're early, just like I thought you'd be. I told you to come at 3:30, remember?" She gave me that classic mother knows best look and said, "Oh, we thought we'd help out a bit, but aren't you a little behind?" Ah, there it was, the thinly veiled criticism. I knew more would follow, so I simply shrugged and said, "Well, since you're here early, why don't you start setting up the rest of the decorations?" My mom blinked, taken aback. "What do you mean? I thought you were doing everything. We paid you, didn't we?" And there it was what I knew would happen. The whole "we paid you, so why are we doing work" line. I'd expected it, but I wasn't about to let them off the hook. "You did pay me, yes," I said calmly, "but you also showed up 3 hours early, so like I mentioned in the invite, early birds get to help. I'm not ready yet, so if you want things to move along, grab some garlands and help finish decorating." My mom looked like she didn't quite know what to say. She stood there for a minute, processing, before she finally muttered something under her breath and started pulling out the garlands from the box. Not 5 minutes later, my uncle and aunt arrived, also way earlier than they were supposed to. And predictably, they just started making comments. "Why isn't anything ready yet? You still haven't started the appetizers?" my aunt asked, eyeing the kitchen like she expected a feast to magically appear. I smiled and said, "You're early, so feel free to start on those appetizers. There's a recipe card on the counter if you need it." My aunt looked at me. "Wait, what? We paid you to host this thing, Sophia, not to work." I shrugged. "I told you guys 3:30 was the start time. You all decided to show up early, so now you get to help. Otherwise, just sit tight and wait for everything to be done when it's supposed to be done." There was some grumbling, but eventually, my uncle grabbed a knife and started slicing cheese for the charcuterie board, while my aunt reluctantly followed the recipe for the appetizers. I could tell they were annoyed, but I wasn't about to back down. This was exactly the point I wanted to make. You want to show up early, you help, period. By the time 2 p.m. rolled around, almost everyone had arrived. My cousins, my grandma, even my dad, they all came early, all expecting a perfectly laid out Christmas spread, only to find that most of the work still hadn't been done. And each time someone arrived, I gave them a job. It was glorious. At first, everyone complained. "Sophia, we paid you $300. Why are we working?" they'd say, but as they started doing the tasks, the complaints simmered down. My dad hung up the lights outside, my cousin set the table, and my mom finished decorating the tree. It was like a well-oiled machine after a while, with everyone pitching in whether they liked it or not. And I was loving it. For once, I wasn't the only one stressing over every little detail, and they were getting a taste of what it really took to make these parties happen. By the time 3:30 p.m. rolled around, everything was finally ready. The decorations were perfect, the appetizers were set, and the dinner was well on its way to being served. But the best part, everyone was already tired from all the work they'd done. My uncle wiped his brow as he sat down, and my aunt sighed in relief when the final dish was placed on the table. As we all sat down to eat, I could feel the shift in the room. The usual smug comments and jokes about me being a perfectionist were nowhere to be found. Instead, there was an air of quiet respect, albeit mixed with exhaustion. They were too tired to even make their usual remarks. It was bliss. Finally, after a few bites of food, my uncle leaned back in his chair and said, "Okay, Sophia. Good one. That was a nice joke, making us all work, but next time, no more jokes, all right? We expect everything to be ready when we show up." I smiled sweetly and replied, "Sure, as long as everyone shows up at 3:30 like they're supposed to. If anyone comes early next time, though, expect to help again. I'm not doing it all alone anymore." There was a pause as everyone looked at me, realizing I wasn't joking this time. I meant every word. My mom even opened her mouth to argue, but my dad cut her off with a chuckle. "You know what, I kind of like this setup," he said. "Maybe we should all pitch in next time." And with that, the conversation shifted. It wasn't the grand Christmas dinner they were used to, but it was a reality check for everyone. I wasn't going to be their personal chef and decorator anymore. If they wanted my elaborate parties, they'd either have to pay up and show up on time or be prepared to get their hands dirty. And honestly, it felt pretty damn good to finally stand up for myself. As the night wound down and everyone started to leave, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. They were tired, full, and hopefully, they'd learned a valuable lesson. No more showing up early, no more rushing me through everything, and definitely no more taking my efforts for granted. As my husband and I cleaned up the leftovers, he gave me a knowing smile. "That went pretty well, don't you think?" I nodded, feeling lighter than I had in years. "Yeah," I said, "I think they finally got the message." Am I AITA for refusing to continue hosting free parties for my family?